All right, so you are now broadcasting and you are recording, so you can go ahead, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I have been given a script as I have used for the past several meetings that I've been asked to read for purposes of this being a Zoom call. So why don't I go ahead, introduce myself as Daniel Dane, the chair of the Needham Golf Club Advisory Committee. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. So why don't I read off who is here, and then we can make note of who is not. So John Schneider, are you able to communicate? All right, we'll come back to John. Dick Riley is not here. Jack?
Yes.
Present?
What's that?
All right, Chris is not here, Chris Gerstel. And Paul Brockman.
Present.
Okay. And joining us as well is Dan Matthews from the Select Board. We're very pleased to have him join us. And then on behalf of the Needham Golf Club, Rick Zambone, you're present to present on behalf of the club?
That's correct. And I just heard from Bob Ernst, and he is not going to be able to make it.
Okay. All right, well, this meeting of the Needham Golf Club Advisory Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. For this meeting, the Needham Golf Club Advisory Committee is convening by Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and that take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. So with that, we can turn to the agenda that was previously posted. The first order of business I will mention, which is not actually on the agenda, but I mentioned before Roy Kramer, who I believe is an original member of the committee and a friend of mine and someone very dedicated to the town, has retired from the committee and has moved out of Needham, unfortunately, and now lives in Natick. But he's a good friend to all of us, and we'll miss him, and we thank him for his service on the committee. But I do believe we will need a replacement, so hopefully by our next session, we'll have a new member, which will be great. And Paul, I think you joined us last time, but is this your first official meeting as a member of the committee?
Yes, it is.
Great. Well, welcome. We're pleased to have you. So, you know, I think it's always good for committees like this to have some new people joining and have some fresh ideas. So we appreciate your participation. I previously circulated minutes from the last meeting. Does anyone have comments or questions on the minutes? And if not, is there a motion to approve them?
Motion to approve them.
Paul, you want a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All right. The minutes have been adopted. And with that, Rick, as I mentioned, your letter was thorough and detailed and addressed the questions we typically ask, but we invite you to give a further overview.
Thank you, Dan, and committee members and Jeff. I just got a few items to add to the minutes or the notes that I sent out, not minutes, but notes that I sent out. I referred in the letter about the fact that we've been certified by the Audubon Society, and that certification is, we've had now for going on 5 years. And in addition to the goats that we own and are enjoying their time around the golf course, we have the flower areas to help the butterflies. And just recently, we've installed our beehive. And the beehive has been started with a queen bee was out there, put out there last week. And the queen has managed to attract well over a couple thousand, getting closer to 5,000 or 6,000 bees right now. It's for those of you who are familiar with the golf course, we located it at the very end of the practice range, by the off to the side of the 9th fairway, and we wanted to keep it away from people, but yet allow the bees to be able to travel. And it's been it was an interesting process to watch Tim Hood, our course superintendent, out there with all of his bee paraphernalia on. And he's had a number of volunteers around town who have been assisting him in setting up the hive and teaching him some of the finer tricks. Apparently, we're not going to be able to get excuse me, honey out of the hive for at least about a year before we get any productive honey. But kind of it's topic of conversation of interest, and it's all part of our Audubon program at the club. The other item I want to mention that's not contained in the letter is this past year, in cooperation with the high school athletic department, we've started a high school women's golf team. And as of, I think they just started up a week or so ago, and they had 15 young ladies sign up for the golf program as members of the team. It's kind of really kind of nice to see them all out there with the Needham golf team bags, with their clubs in the bags, and the girls were over in the practice area. Rich Hassenfuss's wife, some of you may know her, has volunteered to be the girls' golf coach. And she's a pretty good golfer at the club in her own right. So she was a good athlete, and she's done a lot of coaching. So we think it's definitely a plus. It's part of our whole program to get junior golfers and high school golfers involved and excited about the game, because that's where the future is. So they started. I think this year I was talking to Laura Hassenfuss, and she said there were no cuts this year because they want to continue to encourage people. At some point, if it gets unmanageable, there may have to be, but hopefully that won't happen, and it'll just be another activity for the kids at the high school. We've also just from a general perspective, financially, just to update you again from where we were financially, the club is in very sound financial position. Membership is full. We have waiting lists on all classes. Our regular full-time members, our weekday members, our intermediates, which are the 20-year-olds and beyond, and then our junior members are all booked solid. And we have a waiting list. And this year, surprisingly, to a degree, it's surprising, we did not have many resignations. People were tending to want to stay at home, continue to play golf. We expected to lose quite a few, but and that may still occur next year, but we have a healthy waiting list to fill in. So that's really what I have to update on the letter. If someone has any questions or wants to pursue something that was talked about in the letter in more detail, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Members, questions for Rick?
I just think it's a great idea to have the girls, have a girls' golf team at the high school and be able to go down there and use the course.
Yeah, Jack, it's been tremendous because there's a tremendous interest.
Sure.
And where we were having a problem before is quite honestly the whole idea of a mixed team. The girls didn't want to play with the boys, and so they really wanted their own group. And so we talked to the athletic director, and they all agreed it was a good idea to go that way.
Yeah, it's good. There's a few teams in the Bay State League that have the girls.
Yeah.
Golf.
And maybe we'll get actually to participating in some matches.
It's great. Great idea.
Paul, as someone who lives in the neighborhood, do you have questions about neighborhood relations or any issues that have arisen?
Not really. I noticed there was some construction on the course by, was it along Great Plain? What was that about?
Yeah, it's part of our continuing program to improve the course. We have a number of activities that we undertook this year. Number one, the fifth hole, which is the hole that comes up over towards Great Plain Ave. We rerouted the cart path that comes up onto the towards the fifth green and the sixth tee. And we did that for safety purposes. We relocated the cart path so there was a buffer of trees between the sixth tee and where people came up to the green on the fifth green. And then at that point in time, we also, excuse me, looked to restructure that hole a bit by expanding the size of the sand traps and deepening them. So that was done as part of the program. We also eliminated the asphalt cart path that goes down from the sixth tee out into the sixth fairway. And we did that because the maintenance costs on that was so high. And in essence, what we've done is we're going to replace it with a little bit of a shortened gravel path area. And we've already used that, what do you call it, the wet grass that grows on its own when you spray it, sprayed grass. That's been put down and that'll grow. And then we've also added a whole bunch of fescue in and around the green and the tee area. And so that was done. And then the other work we did is over on the seventh tee. That was a tee that had almost a buckle in it. And it had a high point on the back end that was very narrow. And so what we did is we basically replaced the entire tee box area, leveled it, and then resodded it. So that's all been done. Again, just to more of an issue of providing greater surface area for the golfers when they're out there. But thanks for asking.
Rick, in the past, there have been, Tim and the crew do such a fantastic job maintaining the course, but I remember there was the wet rot of a few years ago and occasionally other issues. It's been a pretty nice spring. I assume the course is in good shape.
Yeah, absolutely tremendous shape. I've never seen it look so good. Actually, Tim was able to, because believe it or not, even though it seemed a little colder, the March period, the end of February, beginning of March, was relatively good weather for him to do a lot of the work that he did. So he also went around and punched the greens and the fairways ahead of schedule to help with aeration, aerated the greens and the fairways. And so that doesn't have to be done later in the spring. And the grass is filled in. The other thing we also did is to help with the dampness and the wet fairway over on 9. We injected sand into the fairway area to provide for additional drainage over there. And that was Tim Hood, our superintendent, basically is always in touch with Ed Olson from the town, the Park and Recs forestry guy, and he Ed recommended this procedure. He's used it on a number of fields around town to try and eliminate a lot of the standing water and such. So we did that, and it's been very helpful. So.
In terms of member play so far this spring, how has that been? Member play, and then also address resident play as well, I guess.
Sure. Well, both have been fairly busy. Member play, it's really a continuation of where we left off last year. People want to get out; they want to play golf. Members, again, we have our tee time system, and people sign up for that. And we allow people to sign up for tee time 7 days in advance. And they do that starting at, for example, on a Saturday morning at 7 o'clock, the tee time system opens up for the following weekend. And by 7:20, the tee times are all booked. And so you have to wait during the week for someone to have a need for a fill-in or somebody drops off. We've also, as far as resident play, we've still got we have the new tee registration system that's working fine. We did have a little glitch that they're working on. Apparently, a resident can go in and book a tee time, but they can't go in and cancel it once they've given their information. So we're working with the company that provided the system to us to make the necessary software changes. And apparently that's a problem with their software universally. It's not just with us.
And I know your letter addresses it, but since it's in the lease and an important issue all the time, and today as well, in accepting new members, no discrimination on the basis of any protected class?
No, and they're all, Needham residents in order, chronological order. We haven't, until just recently, completely filled all of the available slots. And so we are now developed a wait list of applicants. We've got the wait list, we have the wait list divided between those that are Needham residents and those that aren't, so that when we bring them in, they can brought in accordance with the lease terms and the ratios that we're supposed to bring them in.
And in terms of what's open and closed due to COVID, I assume you're not doing functions yet?
No, we're not. We're right now in the process of reevaluating our whole function business. Current plans, at least they were current as of last week, with the change in all of the regulations with respect to whether you can wear a mask inside or not, and so on and so forth. One of the things that we're reevaluating is whether we're going to hold off again until the end of June. It's been real interesting, and it's a problem not only in the golf industry, but in other industries as well, as our ability to locate and find help, particularly kitchen help and wait staff or servers. It's been a difficult process, and we haven't stuck to the concept of paying wait staff at the minimum wage or below and allowing them to make it up on tips. We pay them a premium just to be able to bring them on board. And so that's been somewhat successful in our search to find talent. the problem is that, and, you know, in spite of all what you hear in the news, we've had people tell us that until somebody stops giving them this extra money, they don't need to work. They're perfectly happy to sit at home and accept the paycheck. And when that diminishes, they'll come back and look for a job. And so we said, okay, and you know, you really have to, I mean, if you look at what the rate is that you get for being unemployed, it's quite high. So there's a little bit of a lack of incentive.
Yeah, that's an issue at restaurants across the industry as well.
Yeah, yeah. And so from that perspective, you know, everything else is fine. You know, we're going to be, we'll be hopefully getting back into the banquet business, but and we haven't really analyzed how the mask inside issue is going to affect us. We still have all of our employees inside wearing masks, but with first the president and then the governor coming out with new regulations, we've been following and we do it very closely. We have a good working relationship with Tim McDonald and his staff at the Board of Health, and they are very, very helpful to us. We communicate with them regularly on, you know, if we have any questions as to how we should be conducting things, we talk with them, and they're readily available. You know, Tim has my cell phone and I have his cell phone, and we talk whenever there's a question about what if somebody was exposed, what if they weren't, what can we do now, what can't we do, and they're a great resource, and I'm glad they're there, and I'm glad they are more than willing to help and offer us some advice. So that's worked out fine, and I'm sure as things move forward, we'll be asking them for guidance because, you know, from what I understand, the latest regulations say that if you've been vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask inside. Well, that's all well and good. However, in our case, does that mean we can ask the employees if they have been vaccinated or not? And if so, what kind of enforcement powers do we have in telling them that they have to wear a mask or they don't? We do have some staff that, for whatever reason, personal, they've decided not to get vaccinated. And again, you know, it's like a local restaurant. What do you do with the customers, or in our case, the members or guests who arrive that want to have something to eat in the grill room? What do you do in those situations? And then we also have to struggle, and we're going to be talking about what do we have to do if we do go back and start functions? What kind of requirements do we have as far as determining whether people are vaccinated, not vaccinated? Can we screen people? I mean, all that stuff is still to be ferreted out, and you know, it just adds complication, as it does for everybody as they try and run a business.
The grill room has been open for members?
Yeah, the grill room has been open for members. We're planning on opening it for residents on Tuesdays, starting June 8th. Quite honestly, there's been two reasons why we haven't. Number one, a lot of our employees weren't vaccinated, and that was just an added exposure. So what we did is we said to all the employees, we'll give you a day's pay for the day you get vaccinated, be it one or two vaccinations. And if you feel ill the next day, we will also pay you for that day as well. In both instances, neither will be charged against your accrued sick time. So we're basically giving them 2 days of leave allowed for them to get vaccinated as more of an encouragement for them to do so.
It's a good approach. John or anyone else, any further questions?
Do you still have the Tuesday, the Recreation League?
Jack, we didn't last year just because of COVID and the Park and Rec didn't want to run it, which is understandable. We were closed for a good part of the spring anyways. It is starting up again, we talked to the Park and Rec Department, and they're planning on doing it. I'm not sure if it started right yet, but they are planning on going forward with the Tuesday morning league. And
Okay.
honestly, when that league's not running, we have a lot of people signing up for 9-hole rounds.
Sure.
You know, and there's a lot of interest in that by the residents.
Dan?
Yeah, I'm not just a member of the Hair Club for Men. I'm in the senior league. I haven't got my schedule for tomorrow yet, but they started on May 4th, but had a rain out. They did play last week and they should be on track. I think
Okay,
that they
good.
still have space for folks to sign up because they're ramping back up again, but it's a good program.
Yeah, it's interesting, Dan. We've got, from a member or even from a resident perspective, there's a lot of hesitancy out there to participate in some activities. There's a lot of hesitancy to come into the clubhouse, a lot of hesitancy to go to the grill room. We haven't had much activity in the grill room, even though it's been open, socially distanced and all that other stuff. People are reluctant to come in. And I understand that. I truly do. Even once they've been vaccinated, they're reluctant to come in. And so we've got picnic tables outside by the ninth green. We also have, now that the weather's warming up, the deck is available for people to eat outside on the deck. So that's spurred a lot of interest in people coming up and doing that. And then the other thing is that hopefully, once all this stuff starts to clear up, people will feel a little bit more comfortable about coming inside. But we've had a tremendous takeout business as a result of this. And that's worked out extremely well.
It's great to hear. Any further questions from anyone? And if not, we can turn to scheduling our next meeting in most likely November.
Jan, if there's no other questions, I just have one point. I just want to make the committee aware of it. It comes up every year, and this past year was no different. During the winter months, the Needham Golf Club is once again being used as the East Needham Dog Park. And people bring their dogs down. They allow them off the leash, and they allow them to run all over the golf club. The dogs proceed to deposit their personal matter on the course. And in some instances, the owner picks it up and brings it home with them. In other instances, they pick it up, put it in a plastic bag, and leave it for our grounds crew to pick up for them. And they just leave it in a pile somewhere conspicuous so that you don't walk by it. But, you know, we've put signs out there. We've indicated that, you know, it continues to be a very frustrating, and I don't have a solution. So I'm just throwing it out there, and maybe one of the committee members or Mr. Matthews in his role as a select board individual member can give me some guidance and advice as to how better we can educate people in this town about leash laws and the need to keep their pets from defecating all over the property. I don't know, you know, I'm looking for advice.
I can only tell you what I would say to any person that has supervision of a large, what is private property effectively, although they're allowed out there under the terms of the lease for certain recreational purposes. People that aren't following the leash laws or that are allowing their dogs, they're not cleaning up after the dogs. I think your best bet is if it makes a difference, you're going to have to put a ranger out there. You're not dealing with, you know, it's not the whole population. You're dealing with some finite number of people who are scofflaws or indifferent in the same way as you've had a certain number of those
Yeah.
for years. And I think that an honest conversation should be enough to deal with 90% of the problem, but that's the way it has to be done. It's not, if signs and email notices and Facebook posts or whatever people use these days aren't doing it, a little person-to-person conversation is usually enough. Then, of course, you can always take their pictures and put that on the web. That always stirs.
That gets a little risky, Dan, but I'm not an attorney, so.
Yeah,
I agree with Dan that, we've all read the lease, and there are certain winter recreation rights provided under the lease, but dog walking, particularly in a way inconsistent with respect for, your property, is not a protected right under the lease. And as a private property owner, obviously there's a little bit of a public relations issue, I suppose, but you certainly would be within your right to enforce your rights, in a manner consistent with what you think is necessary to protect your property, particularly because you make your business on having grounds that are in nice condition.
Yeah, what's really interesting, Dan, is it doesn't occur during the season.
Yeah.
It's during the off season when you don't have golfers. I mean, I think we've managed to educate people enough to know that when you're out on the course while people are playing golf, you're doing so at your own risk, because there is an inherent risk associated with walking into a 200-mile-an-hour golf ball. And I think people have come to the realization that, they shouldn't be walking up the hill on the path going up to the 9th tee as someone's teeing up on the top of the tee. So I think we're winning the battle during the season. It's really from November through March when there's no snow on the ground. That tends to inhibit people as well. So, and we've posted signs. We've had, Timmy Hood and his crew are still out there. It's a skeleton crew, but they are still out there. And when they come across people, and he in particular gets visibly upset when you have bags of poop, for lack of a better term, sitting waiting for him, and I don't blame him, really.
Well, as a committee, we're certainly supportive, and anything we can do, we'd be happy to help. But I think this is a private property issue.
Yeah, I would say, again, without belaboring it, the way to do it is if you see it's only a handful of people, and they're mainly people who sometimes they think they have a right to do that, or that it's funny, but a lot of them just think it's no big deal, or who cares, and sometimes just a little friendly conversation is enough. And if it makes you feel any better, in my neighborhood, which is no different than anybody else's, one of the most fascinating phenomenon are people they bring their dogs out, the dog does his or her business, the person cleans it up, picks up the bag, takes the bag, and then later in the walking route, drops it on the sidewalk.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. That's the way things are.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
So we've been doing these meetings on Mondays, and I forget, we had email discussion about times that work best. What did we decide? It was the third Monday of a month seems to work better. Is that? Chris isn't here, and it was his schedule we were concerned about with Parks and Rec, but the third Monday of November is November 15. That might make, we've been usually doing it in mid-November sometime before Thanksgiving, so.
And Dan, that will be my last meeting. Bob will be assuming responsibility as president shortly thereafter at our annual meeting, so.
Well, we've enjoyed working with you and appreciate how dedicated you've been to cooperating with us.
No problem at all. It's my pleasure, and I think this group does a great job. I really do. Hopefully everybody has a good and safe summer.
Thank you. You too. So should we go with November 15, should we say 6:30 again? Because I think that was to avoid some other.
Dan, you moved it to 6:30 because I had a time problem at the last meeting, but I'm back in Needham and I don't have a time problem, so whatever is convenient.
Should we say 6:30 again, and that if other people have evening meetings, it avoids it, or is that run into dinner time too much?
It's fine for me.
That's okay from my perspective.
It's
All right.
time for me.
November 15 at 6:30. And I think we'll probably assume that we'll be in person in 5 months, but we'll leave that open a little bit to see how things develop.
I hope so.
Yeah.
It'd be nice if we can give you a in-person send-off, Rick.
Thank you, sir.
Dan, before you guys go, I just wanted to thank Rick and you, Dan, and all the members of the committee. It's kind of a below the radar outfit in a certain ways, but having a little line of communication is very helpful for the town, and it's very good. Thank you all.
We appreciate
you,
that.
Dan.
Thank you for your interest as well. Well, unless anyone has any other business, I think we're adjourned.
Thank you all. Stay safe.
All right.
Good.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Take care.